everyone. It's my pleasure to speak with you today. My name is Ruth Juni, and I'm part of the product marketing organization here at Demandbase. And today we're going to be speaking on the topic of buying groups. Back in June, we announced a feature known as Buying Group AI, and today is the first in a three-part series where we invite guests to come and chat with us about how Buying Group AI will impact their respective areas. So this first session is a deep dive into what analysts need to know. And I'd like to start by introducing our guest speaker, Chris Moody, who's the head of go-to-market thought leadership here at Demandbase. Chris is a former Topo and Gartner analyst. And Chris, would you like to say a few words?
Sure. Thanks for having me, Ruth. Good to see everyone on LinkedIn. Very excited about buying groups because we'll jump into this, but I think it's the promise that we've had in our industry for a long time to target the right person at the right company at the right time with the right content, right? We've always said that, but it's never really come true. And I'm excited that buying groups is going to bring that to life.
Awesome. Before I dive in with some questions for Chris, did want to do a little housekeeping. If you guys do have any questions, feel free to pop them into the chat. We'll get to them as best we can through the session. And before I start, I did just want to set a little bit of context for why Demandbase decided to launch this feature. As many of you know, B2B purchase decisions are made in groups. And what we're seeing is that the number of folks involved in these purchase decisions is growing, but on average, it's between 6 to 10 people. And what we've also seen is that, the traditional sort of lead gen methodology that people follow is a bit too narrow in terms of trying to reach all of the members of a buying committee. And that's really where account-based marketing came into play, right? To look at a full account and all of the different behavioral signals and insights within an account to try and identify those members. But we're also realizing that accounts can be too broad. And that's really where we feel buying groups comes in. We feel that buying groups are just right. However, there's still some issues with trying to identify these buying group members, what we call buying group blindness. It's really hard to identify, engage, and track all of the different members of a buying committee, oftentimes because their roles change depending on the product that you're selling, right? Someone could be a champion for product A within an organization, but then for product B that you're selling, they're actually an influencer or a blocker. So my first question for Chris is, as an analyst, did you run into this problem?
Yes, every single day and in many different situations. If we unpack it a little bit, let's start with leads. I know that many of us, especially those at high-tech companies, SaaS companies, we like to think that leads are old school and we don't focus on MQLs. There are thousands, millions of probably millions of organizations that MQL is a key metric. While we would suggest that there should be a different measure of success and we should progress to account based and progress to buying groups, that's still the world in many organizations. So we have to start there. And it always alarms me when some companies will say, oh, leads are dead, forms are dead, all of those things. I get that it may not be our top performing tactic, but in many organizations, that is the world that they live in. And if we cannot talk to that world, we cannot help solve their problems. And that was a huge learning going from Topo to Gartner. And at Topo, we studied the fastest growing companies in the world, and most were more sophisticated and understood account based, and we're jumping into that head first. But then we went into Gartner and would talk to multi-billion-dollar organizations that haven't even built a sales funnel. And that's me pausing for dramatic effect. That's not lag. I mean, that was the truth. That would happen. And you have that moment where you catch yourself and you go, oh my gosh, we are over sophisticating a lot of what we talk about. We need to start earlier. So that's the first place. We have to start with leads. The next part about accounts being too broad, we saw this all day, every day. I mean, if you're selling to PepsiCo, you may have 30 deals in one company. I was just talking to a customer about a podcast episode, and this particular individual said that their sales cycle is between 54 and 87 weeks. It's a very sophisticated sale, and that their buying teams in one organization, they could have 10 to 20 different buying teams. So let's call them buying groups, right? That's what we're going to call them, with 10 to 20 different decision makers in each buying group. So if we just do the low end of that and say 10 buying groups, 10 decision makers on each buying group, that's 100 different people we have to target in an organization that may have 100,000 folks. And the traditional ways of reaching them, that could be great for awareness, but we know that we're going to miss the 100 people and some of that spend. And in a day and time where there are economic pressures to be as efficient as we can and do more with less and all the other things that make us cringe in sales and marketing, that's the world we live in. We have to be efficient. And to the point about buying groups being just right, that's what gets me excited. The ability to understand, here are the people at the right accounts that you need to action against, and bringing that to life in a product without some obscure workaround or using some different object and saying like, yeah, we can do that. A lot of folks are saying, yeah, we can do that, but there's 5 different steps to work around. This will be a native object in Demandbase. That's what gets me extremely excited, especially for the customer, right? Like, we shouldn't be spamming the wrong people with any message. That's going to enable our end customers to get a better experience while we can be more efficient as well.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about how Demandbase is approaching this actually. So we think we're uniquely positioned to combine our engagement insights with our robust contact and company information to really generate these buying groups and fill in the gaps, right? We have that contact data to be able to identify these key buying group members. We have all of the insights and intent to really understand what's happening at an account to really then sort of map these people to the specific roles that they may have in a buying organization and then actually track them through the funnel and actually deliver some personalized results. And we do this because the way that we're going to do this is actually by making the buying group a core object of the data model. So I wanted to ask your thoughts on, how you feel Demandbase is addressing buying groups. Do you think this is the right sort of way to do it?
I definitely do. I mean, it reminds me of the rise of marketing automation. And, I was acquired by Eloqua as Oracle bought Eloqua, but I also use Marketo and HubSpot. So let's be platform agnostic for a second. It reminds me of when we started to get more sophisticated in how we would approach leads. And that's what this is going to do for all of our customers and everyone who starts to use buying groups. We don't have to target just the broad account. We can get to the right people at the right account and build that automagically. I don't know if that's an official term that we're going to use here, Ruth, but I'm going to say it. The fact that we can infer and pull together the right people to target, that is extremely exciting. And we've tried to do this in manual ways. When I was an analyst, we've talked a lot about high value offers, and that was pull together a meeting that is so valuable and so beneficial to your prospect that it compels them to engage. And in many of those instances, we would say, for us to have said meeting and bring this subject matter expert into that meeting, workshop, executive briefing, whatever it is, we need these 3 people to show up. We cannot invest the time if these 3 people don't show up. That was a manual way to do what will be native in the product. That's what gets me extremely excited about this.
That's awesome. What would you say is the core value of Buying Group AI? I mean, you've talked about it a little bit, but anything else to expand on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the core value is going to be the peace of mind, honestly, and knowing that we will be able to target the right people at the right accounts and mean it and say it with conviction and not just put it on a marketing slide and then sales rolls their eyes. I mean, we will actually be able to target the right people at the right accounts, and it's going to help build that list for you. So yes, we'll still be doing account research. Everyone should still be doing account research, but this is going to help stitch together the missing information. And if you talk to any of our leadership team, you'll probably hear them say better data equals better AI. The data that Demandbase is sitting on is very impressive. And the fact that that is going to be at the core of building intelligent solutions on top, that's a really compelling solution that I think will be extremely valuable to help all marketing and sales leaders be more successful, be more efficient, do more with less, which again, I cringe every time I say it, but every single person we talk to, that's the world that they live in. Go to Market Partners just came out with a report today that is being shared that, over 50% of teams are missing their number right now. If you're missing your number, you have to spend every dollar wisely. And this gives you a way to do it that you haven't been able to do in the past.
What are some of the other problems you think that this will solve for within the go-to-market space? I mean, you've mentioned a couple of them just now, but are there other problems that you think this will definitely address right away?
The thing that I get really excited about, and we haven't talked a ton about this, just the two of us or collectively, but when we're able to target buying groups in the platform, when we can do that, we're able to gather insights and see the performance of how that's working. And I have the most recent mock-ups of new reports that are launching into the product, and they're impressive and compelling, and it saves a ton of time. And I remember doing all of that work manually and trying to identify the insights and being able to tell those stories. Even the high value offers that we spent hundreds and thousands of hours training folks on at Topo and Gartner, that's still a manual process, and you don't get that immediate feedback to see how it impacted the journey and the sales cycle. That's what gets me excited. I'm already in my head thinking about the A/B test that will exist with this, where you can target buying groups and then target similar accounts without targeting the buying groups, and then see the performance and stage by stage conversion and acceleration. That's where I start to geek out and think about the insights we'll be able to provide for our customers. And it's extremely exciting because it's going to help us do our jobs better.
Do you think that there's going to be any changes in the way that people go to market or changes even in some of the technologies that they need to adopt in order to sort of take advantage of this?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I'm not, I won't put my analyst hat on and make one of those big, bold 5-year predictions that are hard to track. There are teams that track it. I will say that if you see those predictions, there are teams that track it at both Gartner and Forrester. But I won't do that. What I will say is, no matter where you are in your journey, in your particular organization, if you're in the marketing team, the sales team, if you're focused on MQLs, if you're focused on qualified accounts, or if you're starting to get into buying groups, there's going to be a natural evolution into being more sophisticated in how we go to market. And buying groups is that next step. So the transition from a lead to an account, we have seen the benefits of that. And I can tell you, I've memorized this for years. I mean, at Topo, when we benchmarked this, the opportunity to close one rate for targeted demand generation, so already being targeted, going after the right leads, was 19% opportunity to close one. And then to do the same thing for the right accounts, when we did that with an account based motion, it went from 19% to 53%. So if we made that jump going from targeted demand gen to great account based and saw 19 to 53%, when we can do great account based motions that are already targeting the right people at the right accounts, where we're fast tracking some of those engagement breakdowns that happen early in the account based process, that's going to dramatically impact performance metrics. And it makes me extremely excited for the profession, right? Like I love when we can all do better in marketing and sales. And this is certainly going to be the next step in how we progress our go to markets. And from the teams we're already talking to about this, that are starting to tinker with this, that's what is really exciting, to see how their eyes light up of what's capable and what they're able to do, and how that changes the content we may produce, the offers we may create, the meetings we could potentially book and run.
I know a number of different analyst firms have already been talking about buying groups over the last couple of years. With the launch of this feature, I mean, do you think that any of their um, thoughts around buying groups will adapt or change to sort of how Demandbase is thinking about it? Or I guess, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's a great point. I think the what usually happens, and again, let me put my safe harbor statement up virtually. So this is just Chris Moody talking. This is not Demandbase, not Gartner, not Forrester. I used to work at one of those, but if we do the safe harbor statement and just start to think it through, usually when there's something new that comes about, like demand unit waterfall, buying groups, right? You'll have a lot of folks who say, yes, we're doing that. But are they really doing that? And do they really understand exactly what they're doing? I think that what will happen, the folks like Demandbase who are leading with buying groups, there will be this collaboration that happens between the analyst firms, where the point of view around what a buying group is, what that means, what it means to target an action against a buying group, it will continue to evolve and improve, just like any other term or technology would. and the folks who are actually doing it, I think there will be a natural separation to say, here's the best implementation of executing against a buying group versus here's one where we may take an opportunity at an account and call it a buying group because the opportunity has people associated with it, right? Like, there's nothing wrong with that. First of all, there's nothing wrong with that, right? Let's
Mhm.
be honest, there's not. But when it's even better, that becomes the standard that we work towards. And that's what I'm excited about. I think that this is going to take us a couple steps higher on our little staircase of maturity for buying groups, and that will continue to happen. And I've seen our roadmap. I'm excited about what will take it a couple steps even further for us. So it's going to be a good thing for all sales and marketing teams and revenue teams and customer success teams, because this will create better experiences for our buyers. We know they're doing more research without us. We know that they're making more decisions without us. We know that they want the information when they want it, where they want it, how they want it. They don't want to go through all these steps, right? This is going to help us to provide a better experience for those people.
If you put your analyst hat back on, sort of, and someone's coming to you with an inquiry about this, what would you recommend to them, I guess, in terms of the steps they could be taking to get ready to sort of change how they go to market to incorporate buying groups? I guess, what are your thoughts on that?
I love that question, and we didn't talk about this prior, so that's a really good question. I mean the reason I was in love with high value offers, which I did not create, that was a topo thing, and Craig Rosenberg, Scott Albro, a lot of the great folks who pulled that together. I started to iterate upon that because I saw the power of what happens when we bring cross functional teams together to think about, for an extremely valuable account, one that we should be doing business with, what can we do to compel them to engage, to convince them to take the meeting with us, and to help us accelerate the deal? And that led to custom account research. And we would talk to the sellers who owned those particular accounts, and they would tell us stories like, and I still remember the stories, right? You get these insights that don't exist in a fully scalable one to many motion that will happen with buying groups. There was a story of one rep who, they were doing a satellite installation and something failed, and he had to take the satellite on his back and go up 15 flights of steps in Mexico and put it on the top. I still remember it. And the point was, oh my gosh, does everyone know that story at this account? Because there's kind of this hero's journey of what you did to work with that account. That level of collaboration between sellers and marketers and the teams that are working in cross-functional pods for account base, that's what everyone should start to think about already if they aren't doing. Not just what's the next piece of content, not what's the next web page or what's the next webinar, what's the next LinkedIn Live. We need to be thinking about, how can we go after accounts that are valuable to us, that we need to be organized on, and provide something extremely valuable to them? Let's see what that feels like. Let's figure out how we work together to do it. Let's watch how it performs. Let's see what performs. Some things might work, some things might not. But get those insights, and that way you can have things locked and loaded for when you're able to embrace buying groups. Cool, when we see a buying group and we've started to see engagement surge with that buying group, here's what we need to start to do and to put into our messaging. So, a lot of it will happen magically for you and automatically. And, that's going to be great. It's going to save you time. But I'm also thinking about, what's that final mile that you could be figuring out now, of what's the
Right.
big compelling thing we could do to really close the deal. And I even talked to one of our sellers this morning who has closed 3 deals by asking on the first call, are you ready to buy? Really, like the first
Yeah,
call.
nice
Think
and
about how long
proactive.
your sales cycle is, right? But that individual feels that they are having such a productive conversation on what the challenges are and that they've researched their account. They have the confidence to ask on the very first call, are you ready to buy? And 3 people said, let's do it. Now, if you don't ask, what happens if you don't ask? You don't receive, right? This
Yep,
is the
you don't
exact same
know.
thing that person said to me. So be thinking about how we can advance the buyer's journey, how we can accelerate it, and blur the lines. I mean, I don't care who owns it. I don't care if this is analyst hat still, right? Like, not Demandbase hat. I don't care if it's marketing that owns it. I don't care if it's sales that owns it. We need to be working together on this. And if we start to think about that collaboration and get even better at aligning and working together, this is going to be a seamless motion that will dramatically improve what anyone is doing today, whether it's leads or accounts.
One more question before I get to sort of your overall takeaways. Um, I guess in terms of obstacles, what do you think will be some of the, like maybe the 1 to 3 top obstacles an organization might face in trying to implement something like this?
Sure. I think it may be somewhat generic, but it's new. So we can almost play out how this has happened in history. A lot of times folks may embrace a new piece of technology or a new feature, and then they still haven't perfected all the things before it. So the first cautionary tale that I would have, an obstacle, is to make sure that we're doing well done account based and we're thinking about those compelling offers before we start to do what we're able to do with buying groups. Now, it will still probably perform better if you don't have that figured out, but I would much rather talk to an organization that knows when these signals happen, here's the meeting we need to have to try to close that deal and win that business. So figure that piece out first, and then it will start to plug in. The other thing that it's another cringe-worthy topic, but alignment is just not happening in most organizations. And every time I talk to friends in the venture community, they continue to be shocked and awed and astonished and dismayed that benchmarks show teams are not getting more aligned. We've been talking about this since forever,
Yeah.
about how sales and marketing need to work together. It just doesn't happen. And that would be a huge thing I would stress to anyone who will listen. Join meetings, talk to them, understand what's working, what's not. Like, talk to your best sellers, talk to people who are lagging, figure out what the differences are, who's telling better stories, or some talking about value in ROI, or some talking about features. There are a lot of different ways that this can work, but too many organizations are assuming that they're aligned by putting things in Slack or email or any place where you may share information. So that would be
Kind of
one
a
thing. Just,
CYA a little bit, right?
oh yeah, yeah. And you know, there's nothing that beats the feeling of really seeing what an aligned sales and marketing team feels like. And when you have, if you're a marketer, when you have a seller that's shouting you out on a sales call, right? I'm terrible at accepting compliments. I usually let it go in one ear and out the other, but that it's jarring when you feel appreciated by the count. It's not even the counterpart, like the other side of the buyer's journey, because we're so conditioned for there to be this tension. And look, we talked to a lot of organizations when I was an analyst, and there were probably 2 or 3 where you could tell there was going to be tension no matter what they did. For the most part, the others, it was communication breakdowns. It was just like in a relationship or a marriage, right? Like, it was not talking in the same love language. It was not doing the right thing. Like, you're not communicating with me the way I want to be communicated to, or I wasn't involved early enough, or I was involved too early. It's a variety of just interpersonal skills that can really start to bridge alignment. And that's the part, like, I think the buying group journey will be fairly seamless. It's the other stuff that I would encourage folks to figure out. I mean, really work on that alignment, really work on what your offers are, really work on great messaging and storytelling and having compelling content. Because if it's not that, look, you can use every great piece of technology in the world. If you haven't figured out those things, you're still not going to reach your full potential. And we
Right.
see it over and over and over in every study, every benchmark, right? Like, buyers are tuning us out if we don't understand their world and talk to them.
Right. I think we're almost out of time. Any last sort of bit of advice or key takeaway that you want the viewers to learn about today's session?
This is, I mean, it's related to buying groups, but it's also just me putting my arm around everyone who will listen to me, right? Look, talk to your customers. Talk to your customers, because a lot of what you'll be able to learn when buying groups are at your fingertips, you're going to see what your customers wanted all along and what their pain points are and what their challenges are and what they appreciate about your products. So really start to work more with your customers, have those stories at your fingertips, build that alignment, think about how you would really target the right people at the right account. Assume that there's no waste. If we play out that scenario, let's assume we're not wasting money, time, effort. What does that look like? Because we need to be ready for that world versus, hey, we know there's going to be some churn through the funnel and people are going to fall out, right? Let's assume they don't. Are we ready for that world and have those conversations now because it's coming?
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much, Chris, for your time today. Really appreciate it. Before we sign off, just wanted to leave the audience with some additional information on ways that they can learn about Buying Group AI. The first is a landing page that we actually have. This is the URL that you can see here on the screen. But on this landing page, you'll find some cool assets, including a blog by our own CMO, John Miller, a really cool CSI video, as well as a short ebook on Buying Group AI, as well as some of the functionality that's going to be releasing over the next 12 to 18 months. And then stay tuned for our next installment of this series, which is on August 16th, a deep dive into what sellers need to know with our Chief Sales Officer, John Itel, hosted by our VP of Product Marketing, Jackie Palmer. And with that, thanks everyone for joining.
Thanks all.